Hi everybody and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make a cheesy chicken casserole that you could totally make ahead. You could even freeze it and have it as a freezer meal. To go alongside that, we're going to make some buttermilk mashed potatoes and a quick, easy honey drop biscuit. Couldn't be simpler. Now I have my oven preheated to 375 degrees. I just have a small baking dish here. You could use the glass, the round glass ones would be fine. You could use anything you wanted, really. You could even use one of those aluminum, like the disposable pans that you can buy. Those are great, especially if you're going to be doing freezer meals. Now, the first thing we're going to do is put about 1 cup, 1 1/3, about a cup and a third or so of water with 1 can of cream of chicken soup. If you don't have cream of chicken, you could use cream of mushroom, cream of celery, any cream of potato soup that you like the flavor of. You can mix it up however you wanted to, would be fine. My allergies are flaring. Forgive me if I clear my throat and all that. Now you want to take a whisk and you want to just sort of blend those. The reason that we're using quite a bit of liquid is that we have got some rice that we need to cook in here in the oven. This is just an oven ready to go in meal. You don't have anything to do on the stovetop. So this is one of those that's great to do ahead. All right, I made a mess. Of course, I always make a mess. Now, here you can use, I just have 1 bag of frozen mixed vegetables, whatever kind you want. You could use just the one called mixed vegetables. This one has carrots and broccoli and cauliflower, but you could use any mixed vegetables that you like. They make many different types of mixed vegetables. Just put those down in there. Here is about a tablespoon of onion powder. If you don't have onion powder and maybe you have a small onion, just mince that up and put that in there. I like to stir that in. Now here I've got about 3/4 of a cup of uncooked rice. It's very important that it be raw, not cooked. Any kind of rice that you like. You could use jasmine, you could use basmati, you could use just regular long grain rice. If you use the brown rice, you will need to increase your cooking time. But that's just regular plain white rice. Now I have here 4 chicken breasts, boneless, skinless chicken breasts. If you wanted to leave them whole, you could just lay them across the top. I'm actually going to cut them a little bit. I just think it's a little easier just to cut them. That way when it comes time to serve, it's a little bit easier. I'm just going to cut off any chunks of fat that might possibly be on there, or any any pieces that you just don't want to consume. All right, I'm going to put that there. And this one seems to be okay. If you have frozen chicken, you can use frozen chicken. You will need to increase your cooking time, but that's okay. This is one of those you could actually do in an Instant Pot. Just layer it in your Instant Pot if you wanted to do it that way. And put it out. I just never use those pre-fixed settings. I always just use the manual setting on my Instant Pot. And I would do this in the Instant Pot with fresh chicken, probably about 20 minutes. If it's frozen, you'll need to increase your time a little bit. All right, let me wash my hands because I've handled raw chicken. All right, we're going to get our chicken salted and peppered. And then we're going to get our chicken casserole in the oven. Remember my rule, never ever put raw meat on your wooden cutting boards. I don't. I've seen people do it, but I don't do that. This is so full that I'm actually going to put it on a baking dish so it doesn't leak out into my oven and make a mess. Now, you'll want to put some pepper. This is freshly ground pepper that I just do in my little spice mill and have ready to go. I don't care for the pre-ground stuff. I just don't think it has any flavor. But you use what you have. And a little bit of kosher salt. That's pretty much all I use is kosher or sometimes the pink Himalayan. I just like it better. Then I've got about a half a cup or so. I'm just using cheddar, but you can use whatever kind of cheese that you like. Any kind, any flavor would be good. Okay, just about half a cup or so. Then I'm going to cover this. Now, I really like the non-stick foil. If you watch this show at all, you know that. I think that's one of the greatest cooking inventions that has come along in a long time. I'm going to loosely cover this with foil, loosely. And I'm going to put it in a 375-degree oven, for about, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And then I'm going to check the chicken to make sure it's cooked through. We're going to put this in our oven at 375 degrees. If you don't want to use chicken breasts, you could use boneless, skinless chicken thighs, or really any kind of chicken that you like would be fine with that. If you didn't want to use chicken, you could do that very same recipe and put some thin cut pork chops in there, would be delicious, or maybe some turkey. If you wanted to cut the chicken into bite-sized pieces, by all means you could do that. Now, I have here some potatoes that I've peeled. These are just regular Idaho potatoes. I just peeled them and I covered them with water, and I am cutting them into cubes because, you know, that's how my mama always did her potatoes for mashed potatoes. She never did the long, skinny strips. She always just did them in cubes. And, you know, I think you grow up with a certain thing, and that's what you do. Now, this is a 5-pound bag because I'm going to be feeding some hungry people. But you would need, you know, about anywhere from 2 to 5 pounds. You could use Yukon Gold potatoes. They're delicious in mashed potatoes. All I'm doing is just cubing these into, you know, just smallish cubes, 2-inch size pieces, and putting them back in the water. It's very important that you have your potatoes in cold water. Always start cooking potatoes in cold water, because if you put them in hot water, the outside will start cooking a lot faster and your potatoes will cook unevenly. So we're just going to get these in some water, get them on the stove, and cook them till they're done. They'll take about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to take a quick break, clean up, get these started. When I come back, we're going to start on our honey drop biscuits. I'll be back here in just a few minutes. Alrighty, now as another side dish, I'm going to make some lemon glazed carrots. Now I know that had a few little carrots in the casserole, but not enough really to make that big a difference. I've got here just some carrots that I peeled them, but I'm going to cut them on the bias, meaning sideways, make them a little bit on the diagonal rather. They just look prettier. And you get a little more surface area for the glaze. when you cut them like that. So just turn your carrot and cut them on an angle, just like that. Okay, as you cut them, you can go ahead and put them in a pot of boiling water. Because they're cut small, they don't take very long to cook. And we're just going to let them cook for about 5 to 10 minutes. Come on, you. There we go. I love carrots. One of my favorite vegetables. I really like all vegetables pretty much. I'm not a fan of mushrooms, although that's not really a vegetable. But either raw or cooked, I can't think of a vegetable I don't like in some form. I don't like raw onions, but I love them cooked. All right, you see we just got a pot of water there, and I've got my carrots in there. And I'm just going to let them cook. I'm going to add a little bit of salt. Now that my water has gotten hot with my potatoes, I'm going to add a little more salt to the water. I never add salt until that water's hot. That water in the carrots is hot. So that just seasons the potatoes as they're cooking. Now, let's get started on our biscuits. I have here a couple of cups of just regular flour, just all purpose. I've got some baking soda, some baking powder, some salt, some cinnamon, and a nutmeg. Now, I like freshly grated nutmeg. I think there's a big difference. I found this nutmeg grater years ago. If you don't have a nutmeg grater, just a rasp, I don't have mine over here, you know, like we zest a lemon with would be fine, or the small holes on a box grater. That smells so good. Did you know that a nutmeg, as it's as it's harvested, has on the outside of the nutmeg like a web-like coating, a hard web coating, and they take that off, and that's actually what mace is. You know, it's a spice mace, is the outside of a nutmeg. All right, just kind of, I don't sift it. I just take my whisk and do it that way. Now I have here some butter that I've cut into smaller cubes. And I'm going to cut the butter in with my pastry blender. If you don't have a pastry blender, you can use 2 forks. You can even use your fingers just to go in there and do that. Okay. Just till it's all incorporated. You could totally do this in a food processor if you wanted to, but I find it just much easier to do it in a bowl. You want to cut that butter in. Sometimes you might have to take your little pastry blender out and get the butter out from between the tongs of the cutter and then go in. All right, that's good. Now I'm going to, I have here some buttermilk. And I'm going to add 1 egg to my buttermilk. And I'm going to beat the egg into the milk. And I'm going to stir in a couple of tablespoons of honey. This is just regular old honey. I love the flavor of honey. I need to get a little tiny little, keep an eye on your potatoes so that they don't boil over on your stove. I've done that so many times. Okay, now whisk that all together. And I always have a little bit of extra flour on the side because you just, depending on the humidity of the day, whether or not you will need some more flour. Okay, and then just mix this with your flour. Get all of that out of there. And mix that all together. This is a very wet dough. It's not like biscuits that you roll out. This is a very wet dough. Depending on how dry your humid or your climate is where you're baking, I need a bigger spatula. You might need to add a little more flour. You might need to add a little bit more buttermilk. Whatever you need to do to get a wet dough is fine. Drop biscuits are more a method than an exact science. I can smell that. I'm going to add a little tiny bit more buttermilk. Did you know that all buttermilk is low-fat buttermilk? It does, you know, a lot of people, I get asked questions sometimes about buttermilk. All I can find is fat-free, low-fat, whatever you want to call it, buttermilk, and that's what it's supposed to be. Now, do you see how by adding, because it's very dry right now, I needed to add a little bit more buttermilk to make a very wet dough, just like this. And that's what we want. Get all of that incorporated to where there's no dry pockets of flour. Then you can take an ice cream scoop, which is my favorite way, but not everybody has those, so I want to show you a different method this morning. I have my baking sheet pan lined with parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, you can use nonstick foil or just spray the pan with baking spray. I just don't like to scrub the pan, it's hard. Take 2 spoons, get a spoonful, and then drop it onto the baking tray. That's why they're called drop biscuits. Try to get them all the same size so they bake evenly. And that's honestly why I like to use a scoop. But I realize not everybody has different size scoops. So I want to show you how to do it with just 2 spoons, about an inch or so apart. These are delicious with any main dish you want to make. Now my potatoes are boiling. My carrots are boiling. My casserole's cooking. These will need to bake, excuse me, at 425 degrees for about 15 minutes or so, 12 to 15 minutes. You'll want to check them. I'm just going to continue putting these on the baking tray and pop them in an oven and let them go for about 15 minutes. Now, I have 2 ovens here. I have double ovens. If you only have 1 oven, just wait till your casserole comes out, preheat or turn it up to 425, and then bake these while that rests. That would be fine. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, just get this done and in the oven. When I come back, we're going to glaze those carrots and mash the potatoes and check on our chicken. And best of all, we get to eat. I'll be back in just a minute. All right, now our carrots are done and I just drained them, and in the very same pot I'm going to melt some butter. We're going to make the glaze to go on top of them, and I've also drained the potatoes. I like to go ahead and put the butter in the potatoes and let it be softening a little bit because this is cold. I like a lot of butter. You use as much or as little as you like. But I don't think that you can have too much butter. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and add my salt to my potatoes. Potatoes need quite a bit of salt. And just let that be seasoning up while we're making this glaze. Now, the butter is melting. I'm going to put a little bit of brown sugar in there. And I'm just going to let the brown sugar and the butter dissolve. Add just a touch of salt, just a touch of pepper. I need to grind up some more pepper. We just want all that to melt. And we're going to make a glaze. And I've got some lemon juice that I'm going to add in there when that gets good and melted. My brown sugar's a little clumpy. I need to help smush it down a little bit. It's still perfectly usable. It's just a little bit clumpy. As brown sugar does, it gets that way. Okay. We're not making a caramel or anything like that. I got my timer on. Let's move that. Okay. We just want to melt it all together. Then I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice to add some acidity and brightness as well as flavor. We're going to let that go for just a minute, and then we'll add the carrots back in and toss them to glaze. Just let that kind of reduce a little bit. In the meantime, keep an eye on it. Bring your potatoes over. We put our butter, we put our salt. We're going to add a little bit of buttermilk. I don't know, probably about 3/4 of a cup because this was 5 pounds of potatoes. You might need to add a little more. You just want it to be creamy. Keep an eye on that mixture. Mashed potatoes. I use a hand mixer. Some people use their stand mixer or a hand masher. But I grew up doing this. Always taste for salt and seasoning. Let's see here. Oh, doesn't need a thing, except pepper. But not everybody likes pepper, so those are done. They are really good. I grew up, this is actually with my mama. I was the potato masher, always. So that was my job when I was little. Now, this is done. Let's cut that off. Add our carrots, our cooked carrots, back in and stir it all together. Oh, look at those. I like to let them just put them in a single layer as much as you can and let them just absorb. Let me turn that back on just for a second. This stove, got to get, let me put that on just low there to kind of keep that warm for just a minute. Our biscuits are done. And let's check on our chicken casserole. I moved it down here to the bottom oven. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That needs to cool. For sure, that's mighty hot. There's our chicken casserole. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Yum. You see how hot that is? You want to let that cool for about 15 minutes before you try to spoon it out, or you're going to have a mess on your hands. Our biscuits are done. We've got them. Need a flat plate to put those on. I'll put them on this. No, I'm going to put the potatoes in this. Let's put our potatoes out into a bowl. Yum. I need somebody to get me just a plate to put my biscuits on. Just some kind of flat, or that white bread bowl back there. Mike, if you will, please, in the back. There's a white braided bread bowl. You'll see it. Here's our wonderful potatoes. You know, So good. Then our carrots, they're done. Perfect, thank you. Okay, let's get this. We've got delicious carrots. Yum. If you had some fresh parsley, you could dice that, mince that, put that on there, but I don't have any. And actually, my store was out. When I went to the grocery store yesterday, because I do the shopping for this too, they were out of so many things. I would top that and this with a little bit of fresh parsley, but we don't have any, so we won't. And then last, but I made a mess, certainly not least, is our delicious little honey drop biscuits. They took about 15 minutes. All righty, put them in a little bread basket or whatever you have, a plate, something like that. I would serve those with a little bit of honey or a little bit of butter. Delicious, delicious. The potatoes need a little pepper. You just gotta have it. Yum, 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 yum. And there you go, an easy, quick meal, a wonderful cheesy chicken casserole with rice and all kinds of goodies down under there, our wonderful buttermilk mashed potatoes, our honey drop biscuits, and our brown sugar and lemon glazed carrots. Delicious, delicious, easy meals. This would totally be one of those recipes that would be great to assemble it in a freezer-safe container and then freeze it, and then it's ready to go when you're ready to cook it or to take to someone. Easy and very, very good. Thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.